Hello my lovelies, and welcome to today's video. My name is Alya and I'm so glad you stopped by. We're talking all about laser for glaucoma today. What is it about, who is suitable, and what's going on out there in the ophthalmic world. So stick around to learn more about laser for glaucoma. Really interesting topic, you guys, because the one thing that we never start with is laser. It's a very interesting thing, but I'll go into why. So who is suitable for laser? First of all, a lot of doctors out there I've found kind of a bit trigger happy with this lasering business, and the way I've always learned, and the doctors I've worked for have always done, is that not everyone is suitable. Some doctors will just do it because it's just the thing that they do. I don't know, it's like a protocol of theirs, and that's fine if that's what they want to do, but I honestly don't think that's the way to go. So how do you know if you're the suitable one? So there's two types of glaucoma that are very appropriate for laser. One is a closed angle, or if you have a narrow angle eye, so you don't necessarily have glaucoma, but you have a narrow angle, or a shallow angle is another way that they describe it. And if that's you, then definitely there is a laser called a PI, or a peripheral iridotomy, which is basically just a piercing for your iris. And the reason we do this is when the liquid that builds up, or the fluid that builds up at the front of the eye, can't escape because the angle, which is where it escapes from, is too narrow, we do have to create an alternate drain. It's completely painless, and it's fairly safe. I mean, it's very rarely any kind of negative side effect from it. You can't usually see it. It's usually quite tiny. So cosmetically there's no real side effect, or consequence I should say. You can only really ever see it if you look really close or under a microscope type thing. And they can just save you from an inevitable event of an angle closure. Now, why is this angle business so important? We have a beautiful meshwork, like a sponge almost, sitting around the edges of our iris, so between our cornea and the colored part of our eye, the iris, all around the full circle, the full circumference there, we have these sponges, and they're just slightly hidden out of sight. You can, to see it, you have to go through a microscope, through a special lit up microscope that the doctors and clinicians have, and a special mirror to see it, because it's just off the visible part of the eye. And when they have a look at it, they can see whether that particular part of the eye is open to receive fluid or closed. Think of it a bit like a swimming pool. So if your front of the eye, or the anterior chamber, was a giant swimming pool, and the drains are not a big hole in the middle like you have on your sink, but it goes all the way around, that there's a hole. And it's not just a simple hole, it's a series of little pipes. And if the water spills over or gets too high, they go through that series of pipes. Now, if those pipes or that hole rather, is too shallow because the actual pool is too small, or the gap is too small, that's a little bit like having a narrow angle. So if you go in one little area and just open up just a few of those pipes, yes, it's not a perfect open eye all the way around, but you'll never have a situation where that water is going to spill right over. The difference, of course, is the eye is not an open pool where the water would go out onto the floor. In the eye, the pressure will just build up because it's a closed structure, and will inevitably cause damage to the nerve, which is at the back of the eye, causing a sort of ripple effect, if you like. And we're going to be avoiding that sort of situation by creating that alternate drain, or creating that little piercing. So it's a very cool laser. As I said, it's a very little consequence. So it's true, some doctors will do it for just what feels like just about everyone, because it is so safe, but it doesn't mean that it's completely safe. It can still cause inflammation. It can still cause at least temporary negative side effects. And if you don't need it, you just don't need it. End of story. Why do something that, unless it's absolutely medically necessary? The other thing that really does get me sometimes is doctors don't explain it well enough, and people don't understand the urgency of it sometimes. That's the other side of things. So if your doctor is saying that you have a shallow angle, if your doctor is saying that they cannot see, or your trabecular meshwork, it might be visible but it's very narrow or closed off, that is the reason for some PI or peripheral iridotomy. It used to be years ago that you had to have it done surgically. Now it's done with a laser. It's a matter of having drops for a few days. It's really of very little consequence, as I said. So I guess it's often better to have it than to not. But yeah, some doctors just don't explain it. And we've got patients that come to us having been told that they need this procedure and hadn't had it. And things got a little bit hairy. And so we've had to do alternate treatments just to get their eye in a safe spot before being able to perform any kind of laser. And when I mean hairy, it's usually that the pressures have gone up. And that's a very scary thing. We never want to be in a situation where a patient with what's called ocular hypertension or high pressures in their eye. That's where you know you've actually got a problem. So a lot of these things are done in an attempt to avoid that ever happening. The other and a really sort of exciting laser that we do, technology that I personally get really excited about, I think it's rather fabulous that it exists, is an SLT. It's a selective laser trabeculectomy. So again, trabecular, from that trabecular meshwork I mentioned, through that meshwork drainage that we have in the surroundings of our eye, the circumference of the iris there, and selective laser. So why selective? It's because we don't actually go there like a Star Trooper or something and go and burn out half the eye. No. The way that this laser works is it doesn't cause any scarring. It doesn't cause any permanent change really. What it does is it goes in and selectively, in sort of select bursts, if you like, goes around, typically it's 180 degrees, so half the eye. One doctor I work for does just the top 180 degrees and then the bottom 180 degrees. Another doctor I work for kind of just goes from sort of, the other one goes a little bit higher, so she starts at sort of, maybe not at 9 o'clock, but maybe like at 7 and goes around. It doesn't really matter. It's just the individual doctor's approach. Both methods are equally as effective. It's just a style, if you like, of the doctor. And the results are fabulous. And the reason I'm so excited, the reason I love this procedure when it's suitable to do, is that these are people with open angles. So these are people with good drains, but perhaps the drain itself is a little bit clogged. So it's an open, it's a fabulous pool with a wide drain around the circumference. But the actual pipes themselves have an issue, or there's just too much water coming out of the tap. When there's too much water coming out of the tap, we automatically give people drops to try and chemically control how much fluid is building up. And that makes sense. I mean, that's what you do. It works, it's very effective. The pressures come down pretty quickly. It's all round very, very good. But there's a few issues with the drops. Main issue is that some people are quite allergic to drops, even if they get given preservative-free ones. It's not a perfect solution, unfortunately, and they do still get a little bit of irritation. Other people get other side effects to drops, like the pigment on their eye changes, so the eye becomes a little bit dark, or they get dark circles, or they just get this redness through their lids. It's all very, it's all very sort of sad to watch. We're telling these people they have a lifetime of drops ahead of them, and they've already got consequences quite early in the picture. Or sometimes people have been on drops for years and years quite successfully and with no consequence. And then, as you get older or as you develop some other medical issues, the drops become a bit of an issue. Now, the first go-to usually is to change the drops to another drop that's more suitable, etc., etc. But occasionally, when you have that really nice open drain, a well-controlled pressure, and sort of all the stars line up, you can offer the patient this selective laser trabeculectomy, and it is fabulous because they get free of their drops a lot of the time, or at least they can reduce the dosage of their drops or the type of drop that they're on. Some of our patients are up on 4 different types of medication for their eyes to control their glaucoma, and this laser allows us to drop them back to just an original, very basic treatment. And if we're successful with that, that is fantastic for the patient. They no longer have to spend an hour every evening instilling drops. They you only have to do that one drop before bed. It improves patient compliance, so the patient's a lot better about doing their drops because they've got less to do, and it's exciting for them, etc., etc. Like, it's just got so many benefits. The only kind of frustration, I guess, with the laser is that you can't guarantee that it's still working over time. So this laser typically lasts, in my personal experience, between 3 and 8 years. Most patients. Occasionally it won't, but for the most part it lasts 3 to 8 years. Sorry. I have one patient that's been had one treatment only each eye in 2010. I saw him the other day, and we're only now just planning to do some more after 11 years or nearly 12 years. So, you know, occasionally get these really great outliers that last really well, and then occasionally get the patient that initially has a good result, but it just doesn't last, or it just doesn't take, you know, you do sort of 4 rounds of laser and it just has very limited results. And it's all down to the patient's individual anatomy and biostructure. There is really very little a doctor can do for a patient to respond better or worse. It's got nothing to do with the technique. It's just whether the patient does or doesn't kind of react positively or, you know, the way we want, desirably, to this treatment, which is why we're a little bit gun shy about doing the treatment in the first place. You select your patient based on whether you think that anatomy is going to be successful, obviously, and it's safe for them. But then you also have to see that the patient will come back for monitoring, because, as I said, we don't know when it's going to stop working. So you still have to do a pressure check every sort of 6 to 12 months. You still have to monitor their glaucoma as if they were on drop treatment, so they still need their yearly review. It's not a cure. It's a just more permanent, it's temporary but more permanent than drops kind of thing. Drops have to go in either twice a day or once a day, or sometimes both, depending on how many drops you're on. It's, you know, it's a sentence. It's a commitment for the rest of your life with drops. Whereas with laser, it's a once to twice a year commitment of going to your specialist to see if they're still working with the laser treatment. So, you know, it's definitely really great for the patients who are suitable. And that's why it gets me so excited when the doctor does deem a patient suitable, and when the patient's, you know, up for it, because it is a financial kind of thing as well. We are very lucky in Australia where Medicare will refund a great deal, great big chunk of the cost, but not all. So it's still a thing, it's still an expense. But it does mean you don't buy drops every month, and it does mean you are free every evening to live your life, and you don't have to sit there and remember and panic about them. A lot of patients panic about their drops. And I kind of get that. I panic about having to take stuff as well when I have to take it, because you forget, and you sort of get annoyed at yourself for forgetting. So, you know, and you feel like when your practitioner has prescribed you something, you want to comply. You want to be sort of on board with your own treatment and your own health, especially with glaucoma, because glaucoma, if you don't treat it, it gets worse. And when it gets worse, it sort of does nothing or it looks like it's doing nothing for the first while. And then eventually one day it's like a boom. It's a hard knock one day where you start to realize that your whole peripheral vision's gone. Unfortunately, it creeps up slowly, at least symptomatically it creeps up slowly. It has absolutely zero symptoms at all, glaucoma, until it becomes an end-stage glaucoma where the vision loss is very apparent, very obvious. And we're here to avoid that for our patients. So trust your clinicians. A lot of the time, the clinicians will be a lot more honest, a lot more forthcoming than the doctors. But I personally am super lucky. I work with doctors who have fabulous bedside manners, who have a lot of respect for the patient. And it's just all around a rather fabulous work environment. So I've been very fortunate. But if you find that you're just not clicking with your surgeon, or you're just not getting the answers, ask the clinicians, you know, ask the nurse or the orthoptist or whoever else is around, or go and see your optometrist and see if they can shed some light on what the doctor is trying to do. So it's wonderful that we have these technologies. It's really, really relieving for me as a clinician that you have other options up your sleeve when patient compliance gets tricky, or patients have really big trouble with their drops, or they just don't want to have to do them. And that's a valid enough reason for a lot of patients that are otherwise suitable for this treatment. Why delay? You know, if you can afford it and it's something that's going to bring a lot of convenience and a lot of comfort to your life, it is a very sound medical procedure that I personally love because it works for a good 80% of the time, you know, probably even closer to 90% of the time. From, you know, most patients we do get results. It's just as simple as that. There's a very few that don't benefit. And even them, I feel like, you know, there's a reason for it. Like they're a trickier patient to begin with. Patients are always warned and always told how we feel. We always share how our predictions go with the patient. And yeah, so the other kind of option, I don't really like to say this, but if you don't gel with your doctor, there is always the option of going to a different doctor. But, you know, most in this world, especially in countries that have an abundance of medical care, in this world, it's hard to survive as a doctor if you're not doing the right thing by your patients. You find the clinic just doesn't do well. You're not going to get referrals from other places if you're not doing the right thing by your patients. So you know, if you've already been referred to a doctor, the chances are they're either doing a good job or they have at least done one a good job in the past. So, all right, my lovelies, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope it was informative as always. I hope you don't have glaucoma and you never need this SLT or PI or anything business. But if you do, at least now you know what it's all about and how it works. And hopefully you'll leave me a like on this video. Comment below to tell me what else you'd like to see on this channel, what other topics about the eye interest you. And I'm more than happy to add it to my plans for future videos. For more stuff about my world, jump onto Instagram or Facebook. Lots going on there. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. Wherever you are around the world, lovelies, I hope you're having an amazing day. I hope you're staying safe and you're getting out there to see your loved ones now that things are slowly opening up around the world. And I can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye.